Hello everyone and welcome to this Designscape session, The New Luxury. I'm Helen Brocklebank. I'm the Chief Executive of Walpole, the sector body for UK luxury. And with me to discuss luxury, both old and new, the impact of the pandemic on our notions of luxury, and whether we're going through a radical rethink on what luxury will mean in the future, are three incredibly creative and entrepreneurial expert panelists, all of whom have moved the dial for luxury in their own interior design practices. Shalini Misra, founder, Shalini Misra Limited, Staffan Tollgard, founder, Tollgard Design Group, Karen Howes, founder and chief exec of Taylor House. Welcome. Sorry, Karen, really fluffed that up in the last bit. Lovely to see you, and and from all across two continents as well. That's really exciting. I guess before we get into our conversation, and what a big topic that is, I'd really like to just come to each of you in turn and just ask you to introduce yourself, so we can get a feel of who you are and kind of how you root your practice. So Shalini, shall I come to you first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the creative director and the founder of my practice, which I set up 20 years ago. I grew up in India. I did my architecture there, and then I came to New York and I did a master's in planning, and then came to London and did a master's in virtual reality. And I just chanced upon interiors because a friend of a friend was moving to London and they asked me to do their project. And 20 years ago, it was very different interior design, and I really loved it. It was just a labor of love. And since then, I've just enjoyed really playing with the psychology of the client's mind and trying to adhere to what they want and create something very personal for them. So, so this concept of luxury for me is really all about catering to the clients.
Oh, wonderful. Staffan, tell me a little bit about you.
Yes, so my name is Staffan Tollgard. I founded our company about 15 years ago, and we have gone from being primarily an interior design practice to be we now have 3 showrooms, and we supply luxury furniture to designers and people around the world. I've also started product designing a few years back, which I'm really enjoying. And I would say luxury is really subjective to me, and I think it's subjective to all of our clients. And I think that's what we'll touch on today, is that it means something different for everyone. So it's not something that we can't kind of achieve. It's actually something that everyone can achieve, but it will mean different things to different people.
Sure. And Karen.
Hi everyone, I'm Karen Howes, CEO of Taylor House Designs. We're an international interior design practice based in Knightsbridge, or really actually now with lockdown all over the world. You can do amazing things remotely. I've been designing now for over 30 years. We've completed over 1,000 projects in that time. And so, yeah, as Shalini says, I've seen a huge difference in our industry from when I started. I lecture at KLC, the teaching school here in London, and across the world, actually. I'm passionate still after all this time about what I do, and I realize actually I love people as much as I love interiors, and business fascinates me too. And the whole thing of luxury, yes, of course it was changing anyway, as we discussed. I think if you ask 10 people to provide their own definitions of luxury, the chances are you'll receive at least 7 and maybe even 9 different explanations. So that's what's going to be interesting today, to see everybody's take. I don't think there's a right and wrong on it either, so it's just purely opinion.
Like design, and it's an immensely subjective, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's a good place to start thinking about. If there are so many definitions of what luxury really is, what have you seen that's changed over the last? Let's not make it pandemic focused at this point, but really, what are the shifts that you've seen over the last couple of years? Karen, shall I come to you first?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen a big shift in sustainability spaces. I mean, as we said, it's always open to interpretation, and I think it's entirely dependent on the number of relative factors, such as the individual's taste and their background and priorities in their life, wealth and income, not to mention, you know, is definitely needs to be applied to that. You know, I think for me, you know, defining luxury as being something that's well made or something expensive, but this, it only gets so far. You know, things can be very well made if they're made by hand, but they can also be made really well by machine. So, and I think things are really expensive and not always well made. So, you know, I think for me it is that exclusivity and that rareness. You know, a lot of what we've been definitely championing in the last few years is great British craftsmanship and the luxury that clients have of working with great craftsmen to create something completely unique and individual. We've just finished an extraordinary project that we've been working on for 3 years with the clients in the Cotswolds. And, you know, every single piece in that home they've had an input on, and they know where it's come from, and they've worked with the craftsmen. And that, for me, I suppose, is one aspect of luxury.
That sounds a stunning project. I can't wait to see more of that.
Yeah.
And what about you, Shalini? What kind of shifts have you seen in the consciousness of that very discerning, affluent customer over the last few years?
Well, I think especially now in COVID-19, there has been a real focus on ourselves, because we've all spent a lot of time with ourselves. And also, you know, this connection also with our own houses. So this connection with our inner world and the outer world, which is always been really fascinating for me and interesting. And I think now, people are really focused about that. So this connection between our inner world, which is all within us, and the outer external environment that surrounds us, is what I find absolutely fascinating. And I'm in some ways, it's nice that people have had time to focus on these aspects. In the outer world, of course, luxury means something exclusive, something at a high value, something really special, something unusual, and all meaning enjoying the best in life. In the interior world, as Karen said, it's something tailor-made, it's something very special, it's created for you. It's not a mass market item. And it's also creating a space which has really good technology nowadays, because that's become a part of our lives in the recent years. It could be also opportunities to acquire something of high value and quality from the past. I find there's a major shift because people really want to acquire a lot of vintage pieces. So we do have a very strong focus on that. And of course, beautifully crafted pieces, and working with, wherever the project is, we try to be vernacular and source craftspeople from that area. And we try a lot to work with them. So really the internal connection is basically, how do you create that feeling of well-being? And that's quite personal. And that's, you know, whether you want to be relaxed, whether you want to be stimulated. So the outer space, the interiors really have to reflect what you really want. So that bit I really enjoy the most.
Yeah, that's a super interesting trend, isn't it, coming out? I'm going to come and pick up on that connection between the interior self and the outside world in a minute, and also the wanting to feel rooted by connecting back through the past or into the local landscape in some way through that craftsmanship. Before I'm going to get into that, because it's such a big topic, Staffan, tell us what kind of shifts and trends that you've been seeing over the last few years. What's been moving the dial for you?
So I was asked this question about 10 years ago now for a magazine, and to outline it, and I kind of pondered it quite a lot, because we were coming out of a recession, if you remember. It was probably about 2011 when the economy started kind of going again after the crash in 2008, and I took a while to kind of try and come up with an answer, but I said straight away, I can tell you what it's not and what it's been, and I hope it's changing. And that was, I said MDF dipped in gold, I think, in the article, which was that we had this thing in the early noughties where we were trying to make everything a little bit shinier and a little bit blingier, and we were kind of cutting shapes out of not particularly authentic materials and then trying to bling them up. And I think our profession was kind of to blame for this almost. And I feel that right there authenticity. Shalini mentioned vintage or antiques, and I think authenticity has become really important. That you understand if it's an old piece, the heritage of it and where it's come from, which makes it very unique. And in new pieces, I think that it has a narrative about it. You understand the materials, who's made it, who designed it, and how it's brought to you. But I think it is very subjective. But and there will be a bit of a backlash, I feel, from all of the social media, because at the moment, anything nice, shiny, and luxurious, you'll see a picture of it within minutes on social media. So I think the kind of pure luxury are the pieces that people don't know about, and that might not be part of a trend, but that mean something really special to you. So I think over the years I've had clients go from, my friend has this beautiful piece, I would like the same piece, to, my friend has this beautiful piece, but I want something very exclusive to me. I want something different. So I think luxury is also being not following a trend. It's being, you carving out what is luxury to you. And I think, with COVID, if we touch on it, I think it's been, your home. Everyone has had eyes on their homes. Luxury is being able to work from home in a quiet and good way. Luxury is having an amazing garden means that you can be outside, even though you're kind of sheltering from the rest of the world. So I think uniqueness, authenticity, and like Shalini said again, something that makes you feel good. I think that, and people are getting to that much more so than having a branded piece with a name on it that is meant to represent luxury.
Yeah. It does feel, absolutely. Sorry, Karen, go on.
No. I think we're seeing, which is a really great thing, and that ostentatiousness, displays of wealth and things are really, are a thing of the past. And and a lot of our clients, have retreated inwards and are really reflecting on how they want to live and what's important to them with regards to their homes and lifestyles. I think that's one of the really good things that's come out of all of this.
So nobody's going to turn up anymore to your studio with a picture of the of Versailles or something and ask you to bling it out.
I think people are eating back in history, but I don't think quite to that extent.
Yeah, the Sèvres carpet, Sèvres porcelain perhaps, and the Oson carpets rather than the gold. I mean, that's really, so there's really, really interesting trends, aren't there, coming out, that quest for authenticity, the connection to the self, the highly individualized pieces, the special, super discreet, super private. I'm thinking about the context of the last 5 months, the crisis. Has that accelerated that shift to those things? The idea that perhaps one's homes were, in a way to signal one's status. You had people around, you wanted to show your art collection, or there was just a more public. Your home was a more public space. Well, of course, the lockdown made everybody's home an incredibly private place. The outside world was very scary, and suddenly your home was a real sanctuary and a haven. Is that something that you've been seeing, that kind of quest for safety and sanctuary, I suppose, as well as the authenticity and privacy? Maybe I'll throw that out to Karen first.
Yeah, I think, yes, I think clients realize even more that their home is their really, really special place. And obviously, as things are starting to open up a bit, and you can have your, you've got your bubble in your family, clients, the kind of home study disappeared, it's now back. The dining room disappeared, it's now back. And I think it's very much that focus on family and closeness and friends, and not necessarily eating out in crazy lavish restaurants all the time, but bringing the focus back to the home, I think is definitely something we're seeing. We've got, a number of clients back in the studio of things that we did 8, 10, 15 years ago, who in lockdown phone me up and say, Karen, I really can see The children have grown a bit, the space needs to change, we need a different focus. We're just starting a 20,000 square foot project, and it's really interesting. The requirements that they have on their space are definitely different to where they would have been 6 months ago. And
so for example,
that privacy and that and a space to reflect and think and luxury. I mean, your space is luxury, isn't it, really? So the more space you have, the more luxury you have, I guess. And obviously not everybody in every walk of life has that, but I do feel that everybody in every walk of life should have that, just however small it is, that just little space to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Who are you in the world? A kind of reflection space.
Yeah.
What about you, Shalini? Have you seen your clients' briefs shift towards that kind of more reflective, more family-focused, intimate kind of brief in the last few months?
Absolutely, completely, and especially with the younger generation, because I have very young clients as well. I think their notion is very different from the people in the past. They don't necessarily see luxury as ostentatious or accumulation of goods. They often use luxury as an adjective to describe some very holistic notions, like luxury of being healthy, to create an atmosphere that's healthy for them, the luxury of peace, the quietness that's coming in now because of COVID as well, the luxury of being in beautiful natural surroundings, so this connection between your landscape and your internal house, and how do you bring in, plants inside, and maybe wallpapers, like you have a beautiful wallpaper behind you, to bring nature inside. So that connection is really important. And something simple like having the luxury of really good friends. So when you do have good friends, and just very simple values in life, I think are coming back in a big way, which was always there, but I think people are focusing on it because also people want to save the world now. They understand what's going on. So whatever they acquire, they want to make sure that it has a meaning in it. And also like how that piece that has been acquired can transform over the years, how the length of that piece can increase over the years. So there's a lot more thought, I think, with interiors now.
That's super insightful, isn't it? That idea that that it's a philosophy, a kind of state of mind. There's a set of values ascribed to and then interpreted, executed through things. Maybe there's a way of making those philosophical ideas live. And what about you, Staffan? Have you seen clients change briefs from March to June to July?
Yes, but I guess in a very similar way to what Karen and Shalini just mentioned, that it's a more inward focus, safety, really looking after your family, not displaying your wealth in the same way. It's about sharing it with your private ones in your family. But the one thing I would say, just to add a bit of money into the whole thing, is that I do think I've started seeing people travel, and hospitality in general has changed dramatically. And I think you will see people who are happy having maybe one or two homes getting a third or a fourth home, because I think it's been fantastic having two homes, and then you go to 5- and 6-star hotels around the world and you enjoy these destinations. But suddenly I've had clients who are worried about staying, worried about flying, not private. And so I'm sure there will be a long list of people ordering private jets as well. And also staying in hotels where other people have stayed. So I think there'll be the people that had the beach house and the main house might get the chalet, etc. So I think that doesn't really go hand in hand with the kind of saving the planet and being a little bit more inward looking. But I think people are, the people that have that kind of money safety will be the kind of the ultimate luxury. Health and making sure that you can look after your family is top of the list. So that might mean for a while not to travel, to other places where other people are staying.
But creating your own space somewhere that you're really attached to. I mean, I think it's I mean, that is I mean, luxury in a way is, I mean, the one thing that money really can't buy is your health, isn't it? So, and that's that has never come more into the spotlight than over the last 5 months. And that, but wellness, or kind of wealthness, as we sometimes call it, has been there for a long while, hasn't it? I mean, I can see that's an iteration. Buying your house somewhere because you don't feel safe to be in a hotel or fly or things like that is an iteration of that. How do you see the idea of being and kind of being well in a space evolving, Staffan?
So I think we've had years of people exercising, and we've gyms, swimming pools, lap pools, etc. Oh, have you disappeared? But also, I think what we've moved now towards is food. Before it seemed like we could all eat whatever we wanted as long as we exercised, and I think we've now gone on to much more kind of thinking about where the food is from, organic, etc. I haven't had a vegetable patch before. I do now. I'm really enjoying it. Growing my own tomatoes.
And I'm very excited.
Yeah, no, it is very exciting, and it's actually one of my favorite kind of relaxation things to do, to go out into the garden and check the vegetable patch.
Yeah.
But no, I think the concentration on well-being as a whole, and not just on exercising, is something important. So it's gone, from just burning calories to now mental well-being, to make sure that you give yourself enough time and a tranquil interior and exterior space to relax in. So that has become part of our brief, for sure. The home is a safe haven where you come home and you need to be able to switch off. You need to be able to connect with your family as opposed to work. So we did a summer house in Scandinavia recently, where the brief was to disconnect. It was to, we walk through the door, we put the mobile phones in a bowl, and we just enjoy each other in this space. And there was lots of kind of fun things that you would kind of say is luxurious. We did a ping pong table that was bespoke, because it was a massive dining table that we could then turn into a ping pong table. But it was done by one of Copenhagen's best joineries, and it's got solid brass pillars where we have a leather net on it. But this is a family who love ping pong. This is how they kind of relax amongst a family. But they also wanted to be able to have dinner, a big dinner party. So it felt right to.
I think as well, it is that bringing I think what's even more important now, it's always been up there anyway, is that whole inside-outside connection, again, is really key, so that you've got that flow of space and bringing as much of the nature as you can into your home, if you're sitting in somewhere with a lovely view.
Sure. Less about the kind of an amazing gym, and more about that kind of essence of tranquility and throughout the entire home. I mean, Shalini, that's been something that's so core to your aesthetic. I mean, it's your kind of, it's really comes out of your practice as being such a important proposition, that inside, where is nature and how does that relate to me? Tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing.
Oh God, I can just go on and on and on about this topic. But often you come across spaces where the colors are jarring with your sensibilities, and that space could be right for someone else, but for you it's not right. So it's creating that very personalized space is really important, where the colors are fitting with your personality. The energy flow is very correct, and the energy flow is basically something I barely talk about it with the clients, but I will incorporate it, and that's coming from Eastern practices like Feng Shui, Vastu, and different practices. It's celebrating the different elements that are within you, like fire, water, ether, air, earth. And how do you actually put it in interiors? It's basically symbolizing it by using different materials to symbolize these the chakras that are within you, the 7 chakras. And I use that in a symbolic manner, which I learned from the late Charles Jenks, the landscape designer. We worked together in a project in India, and I learned the power of symbolism from him. And then that gave me a new light on how to use these things that you really can't show it off. These are very, these energy manifestations. So I learned the power of symbolism and started using that. So also, having spaces that are not cluttered, that are not disorganized, having interiors with the right amount of light, so there's no lack of light. It's moody lighting, but I think lighting is really, really important in interiors. So technology is also very important, and it's everywhere, but how do you hide it? So how do you hide the ugly things, and how do you make it more creative with all the positive things around you? So
yeah, that's interesting. It's a kind of you create a spiritual home as well as just a place to live. Does that go, Shalini, does that go into sustainability in a more literal sense too? I mean, I know that you said before that your connection to nature on as many levels in a house is really, really important, and you've been a proponent of eco-friendly design. But is there within that craving for kind of tranquility and authenticity? Is that about the materials used too? So where does sustainability fit in?
Absolutely, I totally very much for sustainability, and we try to use as much as we can. And it's certainly possible to choose materials that are better for our environment now. I think there's lots more available. There's a lot of research and technology being used in materials. They are a lot more expensive now, like, for example, leather made out of fruit or fungus. But I think as time progresses, they'll become cheaper and it'll be more accessible. But in some ways, it's luxurious because it is special for now. Often man-made materials are cheap, except the ones that are plant-based, like linseed, linoleum and stuff. But excluding them, I think there are really fantastic materials out there. I use a lot of bamboo, which is a very fast-growing plant. And you can use it in fabrics, you can use it in rugs. So as opposed to silk, because silkworms, it's more cruelty to animals, to be a bit more careful about this. The other thing I find very useful is preserving what we already have. And if the clients don't want it, how do you recycle it? How do you upcycle it? Is it painting by adding a few knobs or giving it to charity? So it's very important to see, not to be wasteful with what you already have.
Yeah,
and then the other thing is to also acquire a lot of old pieces, because that's another way of recycling it. And a lot of good quality old pieces, as Staffan mentioned, if they have the right certification, they also go up in value. So it's a good thing to acquire for the client. So yeah, it's very important, I think, to plan for the future.
Is that, Karen, tell us about where you are.
Well, the great thing is we're not seeing clients who just say, I've got a new home, let's just throw out the old and start with the new. That again has been a big change. So definitely upcycling, looking at things and I suppose designing and choosing things that have a longevity, so, I've still got, my first ever client is a dear friend, and I know that the design I did 30 years ago is still, is still in his house. So it is kind of future-proofing it that way is also a great way of making it stay. But I think that, luxury, definitely there was that feeling of, it was a throw, if you didn't have the latest thing, you throw it away and you start again next season, whatever it would be. And I thank goodness that seems to have come to a swift end.
Good. And for you, Staffan, has that gone? You've seen no clients are over the whole, I must have this now, and then it's all going to change next season. Oh.
Yes. We never. I don't think we ever really did a lot of those projects, but there were times when you were driving through Belgravia or Knightsbridge and you saw entire interiors being dumped into a skip outside, and you knew that someone had bought something that was probably really well done up, but it wasn't what they wanted, so they were going to change it. But I think it was a danger. I mean, this is pre 2008, where it could go like fashion, like it was going to move much quicker. And I think that was what came out of the 2008 for me was that people were looking at longevity. So we call them heritage pieces, and that's the kind of piece that you would hope that your children fight over when you're dead. You know, where, you know, I want the sideboard. You know, that's so it's, and you know, the hard thing for us to balance is this thing that obviously what we as creatives want to do is to create and create these wonderful interiors. So it goes a little bit against the fact that we want to make new choices. We want to our clients to invest in a new interior. So I think the balance is now to try and be a little bit more, I guess, be a little bit more good about help explain to the client that actually there are some really good bones there. There are some pieces that you should hold on to, and again, maybe investing in antiques rather than just scrap everything and start again. So I think there's in order to kind of be a bit more environmentally friendly and consider sustainability, it is to not skip things. So get rid of things in a very responsible way. You can donate things. There's always people that need things, and it's acquiring things in a sustainable way, and what's the word? In a responsible way.
Responsible.
Rather, yes.
Kind of the mindful as well as the material, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to, we should bring things to a close now, but I want to ask you all one final question. We've talked a lot when in search for definition of the new luxury around a kind of hyper-localization, people wanting things to be really rooted to nature where they are, authenticity, discretion, privacy, spirituality, a kind of a wellness and a state of mindfulness, sustainability going through the whole thing. If you had to pin that down, this is so awful, into one thing, what the one thing that no luxury home should be without to kind of pin the new luxury down, what could it be? Karen, I'm going to ask you first.
Oh, that's mean that you put me first. I'm just thinking, because we've just actually finished our home that we've been working on for the last 3 years. We moved in a month ago into the main house. For me, my absolute luxury is my incredible view looking south over the countryside, but actually taking the time to look at it. So, you know, before I probably would have said my drinks fridge stocked the hills. But actually now it is that time, you know. I'm really being strict with myself and my team about, you know, no emails after 6 o'clock, and, you know, really my latest obsession is breathing. I've got a complete thing about how we should do that, and really just take in what nature has given us, and it's really, you know, it's always inspired me in terms of what we've done in our interiors, but even more so, I look to nature more and more for
the perfect chair in the perfect spot with the perfect view.
Exactly. Yeah.
Shalini, what about you? What's the one thing you put in somebody's home or your own home to kind of capture the essence of new luxury?
Well, I liked what you said, Helen, about the perfect chair. I think that resonates with me. But one of my favorite quotes is by William Morris, which is like, have nothing in your house that you do not know to be useful or believe to be beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's the essence of luxury. You know, the essence of British luxury, certainly. It has to be functional, but also sensational. So
that's a very Scandinavian approach, actually, to as well. It has to function. I talk about functional sculpture quite often, which is basically a piece that is by itself, it's as beautiful as a sculpture, but you can also sit down and have dinner on the dining table that resembles a sculpture. But I think we're all very similar. I think it's nature for us. I mean, maybe it's also because we decided to move out of London a few years back, and the indoor-outdoor space for us is the ultimate luxury that I couldn't do without now. The opening the kind of sliding doors and feel that you can drift in and out and be in the same space, as it were. And one of my favorite new things, and it's not really luxurious, or at least not that expensive, is outdoor rugs. Fantastic. They're amazing. The difference of kind of walking around barefoot on your kind of stone floor outside, but then being able to sit by the outdoor lounge on an outdoor rug is such a comfortable, beautiful feeling.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
didn't really use outdoor rugs in the past that much, but now I'm all about them. So.
I'll be dialing up all the Walpole rug makers and blanket makers and sending them to you. Shalini, Staffan, Karen, what a great conversation. I have learned so much. It's been a real joy.
Thank you for including us.
I'm going home to completely redo my entire house. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Take care.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to listen to what was such a compelling and exciting discussion. Huge amounts of insight there, but also from judging from the chat function, there's some brilliant questions that have arisen as a result of it. So we're going to do a live Q&A for 10 minutes with Staffan, with Shalini, and with Karen. And you keep your questions coming in on using the chat function. If I can go, I think, to Shalini first, actually. One of the questions that seems to be on everybody's minds is, why do you think the younger generation have a different perception of luxury? And is that due to different upbringings or a kind of different social environment? More kind of like nurture and nurture rather than nature and nurture. What's your take, Shalini?
Well, I think it's a combination of the values that are being set, which they are learning from their schools. There's a lot of emphasis on sustainability now, to save the world, on health, on fitness. These things we never really heard. These were never the buzzwords when we were growing up. It's just it's very important, obviously. And there is a huge shift into that sphere. And I think these really important values then come to well-being and fitness and health and so on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because it really feels like a very long-term view about what luxury means. It's very kind of emotional, and that sustainability idea is huge. And actually, Karen, you discussed the idea of luxury and longevity too. Does that come into design? How can designs last that test of time and reflect the modern rejection of throwaway culture?
I mean, I think the great thing now is that people want to ensure that they are designing for the long term. And I think that definitely comes, as we discussed earlier, with the collectibles and the working craftsman, where, it's not going to be out of date next season. A lot of what happens is, do we follow fashion or does fashion follow us? There's always that big debate. Of course, I think we all agree that fashion follows us, but I think as well, you see that, you see in all the magazines, there'll be a revival of something, and everything is kind of cyclical. And I think it's ensuring that us as designers, that our designers really do stand the test of time. And the fact that you don't have to replace something from season to season is really key.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a real dialogue, isn't it, with the customer? Perhaps if I come on to you, Staffan, now with a question from Flavio del Aquila, who's design architect at QP. Flavio says he believes luxury is being able to live our own reality in the way each one needs it to be. Don't you think that luxury is a very philosophical question here? Don't you think that luxury is a unique functional need?
Well, I agree. I mean, there's luxury and there's luxury. I think the difference between, we were talking about generations again, is that we're kind of concentrating on a good quality of life now. And I think it's before luxury was buying the faster car and the bigger house. And I think now the new generation has a slightly wiser, I think, view on luxury. So therefore, I think he's right. In terms of it's unique and individual, and if you can carve out your own bit of luxury, your own space, your own harmony in your world, then we can all have luxury. It's not necessarily just for the wealthy.
No, kind of luxury is an expression of who you are.
Yeah.
Is there any comments from Karen or Shalini on that?
I mean, I very much agree with that. You know, for a long time, you know, I think a lot of us have felt that luxury sometimes is time and space. You know, it's not something physical. And you know, my kids will say, you know, that my generation have messed it up, and it's for them to put it right. And I'm afraid they're right in that respect. So I think we are all getting to that point, and it's just been speeded up in the last 6 months of reflection and space. And you know, as we mentioned earlier in the chat, you know, it doesn't matter how much space you have, but if you've carved something out that is uniquely yours, that becomes the real luxury.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're saying about time and space has come up from Martin Barandalla from Kaiku. Actually, he believes too that luxury is time and space. Is that something you agree with, Shalini?
Absolutely, and totally. And I would add to Karen and Staffan is, you know, the luxury of going inside you, which is really easy for each one of us. So, you know, by meditating, by breathing, or just by centering your thoughts inside you, I think that is a really good balancing, stable act. And then once you're thinking of your outer environment, that's where we as interior designers come to play.
But that's a big challenge, isn't it, to kind of reflect that inner outer thing? I mean, I know that was what you were talking a lot about during our conversation earlier, but yeah, the soul inside expressed in the design of one's home.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of you know, designs in fabrics and furnishings that reflect nature and the feeling of that balance and harmony. I think people will want an interior that is really calming and soothing. We're not afraid of working with colour, and I think seeing more colour come into the home, to me, gives energy and vibrancy that is really welcome.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's a real seismic psychological shift as much as anything. The next question I want to bring to you is from Jason Chaba, who is a director at Silver Lining Furniture. Less philosophical, less psychological, but actually what he wants to know is the experience of creating a piece as important as the piece itself, as the finished object? Who'd like to take that first? Shall I come to you, Staffan, with that one?
I'll take that one.
Sorry. Oh, okay. We're going to go Karen.
We've just done an amazing table with Silver Lining, actually, for our project in the Cotswolds, and you know, they really listened to the client. They interpreted what the client wanted, and they've created something really unique, but is very tactile and in touch with nature. So you know, I think that's really key, and that came about as a collaboration between designer, manufacturer, workshop, and client, as we were talking about earlier.
So you're letting the client into that process early on, so they can share the experience of creating too.
It's something that rarely used to happen. Actually, we just come to them with, here you go, here's the end product. But actually, more and more, they want to be involved right at the outset.
Sorry, Staffan, did you have something to?
Well, I completely agree with that, but I think on top of that, pieces that have a bit of heritage is sold often by the narrative, and people are much more interested, or our clients are much more interested in understanding the designer, you know, who they were, are, and the piece, how it came about. So there's a whole narrative. And I think if it's a bespoke piece, they can be part of the narrative. That, you know, that you bring a little bit of the client into the making of the piece, and you know, that's to some the ultimate luxury, I think. But I think even on the designed pieces that we sell now, our clients are much more inclined to ask about where the wood comes from, who the designer is, and if it's a designer from you know, a past time, the 50s and 60s are quite important to us. Then we make sure that they understand how it was designed, how it was made then, and how it's made today.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Do you? I'm going to move on to a question about the circular economy now, and I want to come to Shalini on this one, just because thinking about bespoke is very personal, very individual, but within the sustainability mindset that we're in, sharing and the circular economy is important. Do you think can people rent their items and still achieve luxury? Is that possible, do you think, in your world, Shalini?
That's very interesting, because now, with likes of Uber and likes of, you don't need to have a really luxurious car. You can just rent it for half an hour, 1 hour, and feel like you're really rich in a really beautiful car. Or you can rent a dress, which is fantastic, for an occasion. For one apartment I did in Mayfair a few years ago, I rented furniture from a gallery. It was a show apartment for a while, and that was a huge success. And I rented art from 2 or 3 different galleries, and that was really easy because I could just go and pick and choose from various people and put it together. So I really, really like the idea of renting.
It feels like the customer is really driving in like a very interesting, very flexible conversation. Speaking of interesting, flexible conversations, I wish we had at least another, 3 hours to chat about this, but I have to bring things to a close. You've been amazing. I have learned so much, and I'm sure that the what seems like a record audience listening in has done too. Karen, Staffan, Shalini, huge thanks, and thank you Designscape for hosting this conversation. We'll see you again. Bye bye.